Sean, thank you. And Father, thank you. They may get us confused by our glasses, but they'll never get us confused by our suits. Okay. It's an honor to be with all of you tonight, and particularly with Ellen. Congratulations. You are a true American hero. I was going to tell Sarah how fortunate she is to have you as a mom, so pass that on to her. I bring you greetings from Texas. A state that I was proud to lead until 16 days ago. And I was sharing with some friends that you think about for a really extended period of time. My wife and I lived in this extraordinary house, some 10,000 square foot of historic, beautiful mansion in downtown Austin on a square block of manicured landscape that the dogs had the run of. And today we're in 1,400 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, little condo, downtown Austin, Texas, 4 dogs and no yard. So that old saying, Allie, that we live in interesting times is really true. You know, earlier this week there was this liberal congressman from Florida, and he called Texans crazy. And Robbie, he is right. We are crazy. We're crazy about jobs. We're crazy about opportunity. We're crazy about liberty. We're crazy about the Constitution. I'm particularly crazy about the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment. What we're not crazy about is a government that taxes too much, borrows too much, spends too much. Americans face this very important choice about the future, whether we're going to continue to pursue the Washington model of reckless spending and taxes, job-killing regulations, and government that's too big to work, or whether we're going to choose the red state model, alive in my home state and many other good red state governed states, where taxes are low, regulations are reasonable, and opportunity is on the rise. This last November, the American people issued a verdict on those issues. Loud and clear, I might add. They looked at the Obama administration, and they looked at all the failings. They saw a VA that's allowing our heroes to die, the IRS that are targeting our citizens, the administration trading 5 terrorists for a military deserter. They saw the rise of ISIS. They saw the lies upon which Obamacare is passed. They saw the weakest recovery in the history of this country. Americans looked at all of that, and they said resoundingly, enough. We've had it. Now, let's be clear about something. The American voters' rejection of the Democrat policies doesn't mean that they're embracing Republicans. A congressional majority is a terrible thing to waste. See, the power granted to the Republicans by the people has to be used to serve the people. It's not good enough to state what we're just against. We must articulate what we are for. And in that respect, we look at 2016, we got to remember we're not electing a critic-in-chief. We are electing a commander-in-chief. And after the most partisan president of the modern era, it is vital that we elect leadership that rises above this partisan bickering, rises above the grandstanding and the gridlock, bring Americans together and heal the divisions in this nation. You know, when I look at America, I see past our present decline to a future of great promise. We're home to the greatest entrepreneurs and innovators in the world, from innovations like the iPad to engineering feats like hydraulic fracturing, to the serum that saved the doctor who was stricken with Ebola. America offers this culture of innovation and creativity that has changed the world. Now, it's the private sector that drives innovation, but it's the public sector that creates the climate that allows for innovation to thrive. And on this score, I happen to think we could do a lot better. We're just a couple of good decisions away from unlocking the potential of the American worker. And I happen to think it starts with energy. 6 years. 6 years of study on this Keystone pipeline, and still nothing happens. I mean, we got dozens of liquefied natural gas facilities that are awaiting federal approval. When Vladimir Putin was invading Ukraine, the president dithered. He could have sent a powerful message to that Russian president. He could have said, we will flood the economy with energy exports and we will stand with our European friends. But he didn't. The whole Obama energy policy amounts to this long list of projects that we can't begin, permits that we can't grant, studies we can't conclude, and resources we can't use. But with the right leadership, we can begin to unleash the arsenal of American energy, which will create jobs and make this country energy secure. And one day, end our dependence on those foreign sources of energy, those hostile foreign sources of energy. See, to create jobs, we also need to reform the tax code, I will suggest. America's got one of the highest corporate tax codes in the Western world. And what happens is these policies, they ship off these thousands of jobs overseas. They send capital fleeing to foreign nations. And we got this broken, outdated tax code, and it's become an incubator for corruption, for favoritism, for bureaucratic harassment. And it has to be reformed. We need to stop strangling our small businesses in this country with overregulation. I want folks on Main Street, not just the folks on Wall Street, to be able to make a living in this market. We need to lower the tax burden on small businesses, just as much as we do on the big businesses. And we need to create this climate where entrepreneurs are willing to start new businesses. You know, you got runaway agencies out there that are harming business startups. They're slowing down our economic recovery. We also have to be honest with the American people about this immoral debt that's being placed on the next generation. No great nation has ever taxed and spent itself to prosperity. Never. Yet that's exactly the solution our current leaders seek. Well, I should say, the president doesn't call it spending. He prefers to call it investing. But the results of their policies is the greatest indictment of their actions. Huge deficits without job creation. Stagnant wages. You got record student debt. You got a record number of people on food stamps. You got discouraged workers who've stopped looking. And as the CEO of Gala told us this week, millions of Americans are uncounted in the unemployment numbers. Policies that encourage part-time over full-time work. We got policies that create incentives to not work at all. And you got to ask, Is this really the best that we can do? Are we to tell the middle class in this country that the American dream is no longer attainable for you? Are you just going to have to work harder to tread water? Now, think about the president's plan for these 527 college savings plans. It's not the wealthiest 1% that's going to get hurt by this. It's that struggling family that's out there in the middle class. How can the same president who says community colleges should be free says he wants to tax college savings plans for the middle class? Mr. President, there is no free lunch. It's not there. But when people work hard, when they earn enough to save for their kids' college, the government shouldn't take it away from them. Matter of fact, it was such a bad idea that even he's now against it. Who knows? Maybe he may find that same revelation with the Keystone. I think it's time we started thinking bigger. I happen to know that we can unleash the growth and the opportunity and restore the American dream for the middle class. And I know it because it happened in the 13th largest economy in the world. It happened in my home state. During my 14 years as governor, we created nearly 1/3 of all the jobs created in America. In the last 7 years, my home state created 1.4 million jobs. Matter of fact, if you take Texas out of the equation, if you take Texas out of the picture, during that period, the country still would be 400,000 jobs below water. And those jobs have occurred across income levels, all the income groups. For 12 straight years, we have led the nation in international exports. In 2013, we surpassed California to become the #1 high-tech exporting state in the nation. More people have moved to Texas than any other state. And the reason's simple. Let me give you a little news flash here. It's not because the weather's so great in August. It's because Texas is where they find opportunity. We respect private enterprise. We respect work, which means government shouldn't tax wages too much or tax companies so much that they quit hiring people. Finally, we learn to respect the fact, a powerful fact of economic life. Capital moves where it's most welcome. And our formula for success is pretty simple. Keep the taxes low. Implement smart regulations. Have an accountable public school system that in turn develops a skilled workforce. And stop lawsuit abuse at the courthouse. Those 4 things. And if you've been to Texas, you know we like to think of ourselves as unique. Eduardo, you know this because I've told you that enough times. But what's happening there is not a miracle. Miracles, Father, I can't explain. This I can, because economic revival can be explained. It can happen anywhere in America. It can happen in California. It can happen in Illinois. I know that this is going to shock you. It can even happen right here in Washington, D.C. But it requires a government that has the wisdom to get out of the way. Too often we see our federal government involved in areas where they don't belong and, frankly, disregarding their constitutional duty. As a border governor, I can think of no greater example of Washington's ineptness and their refusal to secure our border with Mexico. There, Alfonso, so many attempt to come to this state of Texas, come to this country by any means, legal and illegal. Even more troubling than the economic migrant, though, are those children who come here from Central America unaccompanied by their parents. More troubling than that to me are these drug cartels, these transnational gangs that exploit those individuals and that threaten our citizens. Those who smuggle children, that enslave women, that destroy lives by peddling their illegal drugs and their weapons. They are the face of evil. And we have not stood idly by when that threat faced us in Texas. I deployed the Texas National Guard to the border to fight criminal activity, and Texas has done more than any state in this nation to secure that border. And the message is clear. As long as Washington fails to do its constitutional duty to secure that border, Texas will. So while the president fails to abide by his constitutional obligation to secure the border, he's also ignored the section in the Constitution about the separation of powers. When he issued that executive order on immigration, there is a way to deal with people who broke our laws and come here illegally, but it is not by bypassing Congress, but by working with them. This is not just the president's fault either. Congress should have addressed this issue long ago. And that's the problem with Washington today. It's become this debating society that seldom solve problems. Governors have to make choices. We have to make choices and take action. Americans have become cynical that Washington can ever change. And I'm kind of skeptical that an agent of change can come from Washington, to tell you the truth. But change must occur because our nation is on this slow glide path to decline. And as concerned as I am about our economic policies, I am as equally concerned about our foreign policy. Time and time again, this administration has chosen to abandon our friends and weaken our alliances. Take Israel. When peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians fell apart, did we stand with our greatest ally in the Middle East? No, there were unnamed administration sources that were quoted attacking the Israeli prime minister. And the Secretary of State compared Israel to the apartheid regime in South Africa. That is not the America that I know. The America I know stands for freedom, and it stands steadfast with Israel. Then there's Iraq. There's Syria. For more than 8 years, we sacrificed our blood and our treasure in places like Tikrit, Baghdad, Fallujah. We lost our best and our bravest in a difficult war that continues to have consequences in the form of lives broken by battle. I talked to a lot of mothers, fathers, husbands, and wives, children who lost their loved ones on the field of battle. They gave everything. And what they gave won the war in Iraq. We only needed leadership from Washington to secure the peace. But the president withdrew. He withdrew our troops. He left Iraq vulnerable to a terrorist resurgence. Last year we saw that threat gather strength in the form of ISIS. We saw ISIS terrorists in American tanks using American weapons, taking cities that were secured by the sacrifice of American blood. And this happened because of this president's inaction in Syria. He allowed opposition forces to Assad to become radicalized. They grew in strength and number, and they eventually crossed over that border into Iraq. And separately, He warned the Syrian dictator that using chemical weapons on his own people was a red line that he could not cross. But he crossed that line without consequence, meaning a dictator today is still in power because of this administration's empty words. When a president makes promises that he won't back up, his statements are not policy, they're just an opinion. And the world takes note. The world takes note. They realize that they can test us, test our resolve, test our strength. What is at stake is the absolute preservation of Western values. And what is required is not moral confusion, but moral clarity. It matters. It matters that we understand this for one reason. Without the confidence in the truth and the goodness of our own values, that great moral inheritance of our own culture, how are we going to deal with the falsehood of theirs? This is not a rhetorical question. When we witness the brutality of this enemy in Paris, and again this week with the Jordanian pilots, incineration, what is needed at this time in history is a clear vision for the world, with America leading again and freedom on the march again. Some years ago, I had the great privilege to visit one of this globe's greatest memorials to freedom, the American Cemetery above Omaha Beach in Normandy. I took my father back to visit his old air base in East Anglia. He was a young 19-year-old tail gunner who flew 35 missions over Nazi-held Germany. We crossed the English Channel, and my dad said, 71. I said, what are you talking about, Dad? He said, this is my 71st trip across the English Channel. We went to that cemetery, and on that quiet hillside, above that coast, are thousands of white markers representing the lives lost on the altar of freedom. Each one of those gravestones face west, looking across the ocean to the America that they loved, to the America that they defended, to the America that they would never come home to again. Today, they look upon us in silent judgment. And today, we must ask ourselves, if we remain a nation worthy of their sacrifice, if we learn the lessons of their generation, that evil must be confronted, that courage is the greatest weapon in the arsenal of free men and women, that America must always lead if we're always to be free. While I have a quarrel or two with my government, I do love my country. I'm proud to be an American. Proud to be a citizen of a country that stands for freedom, that defends freedom around the globe. I'm proud of our free enterprise system that allows people to risk their capital, to both succeed and fail, but to get up again and dust yourself off and go at it again. I'm proud of this great American industry that we have and its innovations. I'm proud to have worn the uniform of the United States Air Force. I'm proud of the young men and women who travel to far-flung regions of the world today to fight for all that's right in the world. There is nothing wrong in America that can't be fixed with a change in leadership. The next 2 years are about hope and revival, about a vision to restore America's place in the world. We must again be the voice of ideas, of opportunity, of optimism, and not merely just the voice of opposition. America is looking for a new path forward, and beginning today, let's give it to them. God bless you, and thank you all for letting me come and be a part of this today.